What I'm excited about today is we're actually going to introduce a new segment that's going to lead off, literally, the show every week. And it's called The Lead Off, and it's going to be news from around MLB and from around the league and different things that are going on, storylines, whatever fits the fancy of the leadoff. And this week, there is nothing else that should be talked about but this man right here, Freddie Freeman, who last weekend was back in Atlanta. It was an emotional scene. It was, I don't want to say oddly emotional, because you have this situation where this guy has spent so much time of his life, literally grew up in Atlanta, and is back there for the first time. But it did seem like it was a lot. And so over the course of the weekend, I've never seen an athlete with that much emotion during a game. When he got that standing ovation before his first at bat, and it took a long time for him to compose himself and get into the box, there was something different. He was given his World Series ring this weekend, so there was all the emotions that flooded in with that. And I saw those videos and I was like, I'm glad that Freddie's getting some closure. And honestly, I never thought more about it until Wednesday night. On Wednesday, there was a report from Doug Gottlieb that stated that Freeman's agent, during the free agency process, had withheld a final offer from the Atlanta Braves. In fact, Gottlieb tweeted, he said that Casey Close, Freeman's agent, never told Freddie Freeman about the Braves' final offer, and that is why Freddie Freeman fired him. He found out in Atlanta this weekend. It isn't rare to have that happen in the MLB, but it happened. Close knew Freddie would sign the deal taken, or he would sign the Atlanta deal basically, and he withheld that from him so that he would ultimately sign with the Dodgers for more money, is essentially what Gottlieb is saying occurred during this free agency process. And I read that tweet, and I didn't think much about it at first, but then I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I'm sitting here thinking, what is going on? And then I started to remember back to the free agency situation with Freddie Freeman, and I was like, you know what? Now that I think about it more, that did have a little bit of stink on it. It did have a little bit of this, something doesn't necessarily feel right. Now, I'm not saying that Gottlieb is correct, because actually Close fired back through Tom Verducci of Sports Illustrated via a tweet from Molly Knight where she said that in a statement to Sports Illustrated on Wednesday night, Close said this, Freddie's former agent: "There's no truth whatsoever in what Doug Gottlieb recklessly tweeted. I would testify to that under oath. We are currently evaluating all legal options." And so when I read that tweet, and I'm going, okay, what's the story? What's the situation? What do we make of all of this drama surrounding a guy that, for all intents and purposes, is a good guy? He's a great baseball player. He was an integral part of the Braves' success over the last few years, specifically their World Series win last year. What do we make of this drama? And so I just started going through everything that I could go through. And I found an interview with Freddie Freeman before the series in Atlanta, and he walked into the media room and was already in tears. And it was a 13-minute interview. And he cried the entire time. Now, I'm not one to say men shouldn't cry, don't show emotion, but there's something telling when somebody shows that much emotion. And then we look back and we think about the way that the free agency went down for Freddie Freeman. And I sit back and I look and I go, something just doesn't seem right. I've always ascribed to, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, then it's a freaking duck. And in a situation like this, you got a guy who is a lifelong Brave, was known as this generation's Mr. Brave, and you got the sense that he never wanted to leave Atlanta. But then Atlanta traded for Matt Olson. And you could get the sense when they traded for Matt Olson that there was almost this feeling of betrayal. Freddie was in the dark. There was no idea that this was going to happen, and almost, like I said, a sense of betrayal. And yet, he signs with the Dodgers. He signs a 6-year, $162 million deal, which gives him an average annual value of about $27 million a year, which was not much different than what the Braves had actually offered him. The Braves ultimately had offered him a 5-year, $140 million deal. He countered, or his agent countered, I should say, with a couple of different offers, a 5-year offer and a 6-year offer, and gave him a 1-hour ultimatum is ultimately the way that it went down. 2 days later, the Braves traded for Matt Olson, and then on March 17th, Freddie Freeman signed with the Los Angeles Dodgers. And I have never seen anything what I saw in Freddie Freeman over the last weekend. I've never seen that much emotion. I've never seen a guy go back to his hometown and exude that much of what might have been feeling. It was a situation where you look back and you almost feel for the guy, like he had one pulled over for him, like he was missing home, like he was homesick, like he could not compose himself to the point that he's got a towel in the interview and continuously wiping his eyes and his nose. And this drama is, I don't even know the word for it. It's incredible is what it is. First of all, the humanizing aspect of Freddie Freeman, to sit in front of cameras and to stand in front of that crowd in Atlanta and give an emotional speech to them, telling them that they will always love him, or he will always love them. Each and every one of them is what he said, which then led to their clubhouse leader, Clayton Kershaw, making statements like, "I hope we're not playing second fiddle." And apparently the two have discussed that and all is good and all that, but it just seems like this is a major distraction that could become an issue for the Dodgers, especially if more evidence comes out. If there's more evidence that comes out that says that Close definitely hid that offer from Freddie, then where do we go from there? Because clearly, Freddie doesn't want to be a Dodger if that's the case. Now, I'm not saying that he won't perform. I'm not saying that he won't be somebody that does his best, because Freddie Freeman seems like a good guy that signed with the Dodgers. He's a Dodger for the next 6 years, and he's going to do what he can for the Dodgers over those next 6 years. But there's always something in the back of his mind of he missing Atlanta, and what's going to happen when they go back to Atlanta for a potential NLCS or an NLDS, or there's all these different question marks, and that can lead to consternation within a clubhouse. And it's very interesting to me that this far into the season, these reports break. And I don't know if it's media being media and waiting for the right opportunity to break this story. But when Freddie Freeman returned home to Atlanta, he found out, supposedly, that his agent had hid their final offer from him. Now, it tracks because we know that recently he has fired his agent. But some unnecessary, or so much unnecessary drama for one of the game's truly good guys, and you can't help but feel sorry for the guy. It is very difficult to not have some kind of emotional reaction if you watch the interview that Freddie gave. Holding a towel, sitting there, addressing the media, can't even look them in the eye because he's distraught. You would literally have to have the emotional intelligence of a rock to not be moved by something like that. And you feel bad for the guy. I know this, in talking to friends and discussing the situation with them at length last night, this situation has created lifelong not friends, but fans for Freddie Freeman. I know in the end he's going to be fine. Listen, the guy's making a ton of money. He's getting to play baseball for a job. So it is difficult to feel sorry for the guy, but let's not forget that he's human. Atlanta is where he raised his family. Atlanta is where his son made friends. And he no longer lives in Atlanta. There is difficulty associated with that. There is emotion associated with that. And caught in the crosshairs of all this is one of the truly good guys in baseball. And I hope that the situation works out, and I hope there was nothing malicious that took place. I think there's going to be a lot more that comes out in the coming weeks of what really went down during that free agency. And the truth of the matter is we probably will never know the full extent. But what we do know is this: Freddie misses Atlanta, but he is a Dodger. And I expect him to still continue to be the best player that he can be for the Dodgers in that uniform. And that's going to do it for the leadoff in this episode of The Corner.
Man on a mission, I'ma get it. You know I be on the way. Yeah. You know I be on the way.